Welcome everyone to the second of our webinars in the series for Festival for Finance. So I'm delighted this week to be joined by Michael Hayward and Adrienne Hanna, as well as Hilary Cook. So our session for today is all about looking at preparing a demand forecast. So looking at the top line of the P&L, and we're going to be dipping into the expertise of our panelists. Just to set the scene, the Festival for Finance is a joint collaboration between the Master Innholders, Arena for Finance and Merlin Consulting. My name is Deborah Adams and my company is Arena for Finance, and we specialise in hospitality finance training. So we have a couple more webinars coming up through the course of July. Next week, next Thursday, we have Managing Food Costs. So obviously a cost that has been rising at a rate probably above the rate of inflation over the last few months. And so we have some specialist experts to talk to us next week, Sarah Dovey from Cafudo and Adrian Martin from the Edge Hotel School. And he's just written a book focusing on improving your hotel profitability. And we're also joined by Eleanor Morris from WRAP, and she's going to be talking to us about food waste. So a very exciting session next week, so I hope you can join us for that. And then the final session in the series is on the 21st of July. And in that session, we're going to be looking at managing energy costs. So another significant cost in the P&L. And for that session, we're joined by Peter Till from the Energy and Environment Alliance, Paul Nisbet from Valor Hospitality, Michael Grove from Hotstats, who's going to be taking us through some of the data that they're collecting on energy costs, and Sue Williams from the Watley Manor Hotel, where they have been recognised and awarded for many of their different initiatives in the area of sustainability and energy management. So do sign up for those sessions. You will receive a link tomorrow after this session, giving you the links to next week and then the following week's session. So we do hope you can join us for that. So this afternoon, we're talking all about the top line, and in a moment I will introduce our very special panellists who have joined us today. Hilary's going to take us, though, first of all, just a few notes about the project she's involved with at Merlin Consulting, in particular MIDAS, MILD and the Master Innholders.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again. We've got a great turnout, which is really encouraging, because Deborah and I some months ago saying let's put on a festival for finance in the summer. I wonder if we could get anyone to come, and it's proving to be very successful. So welcome today. This recording will be available on the Arena for Finance website and also on the Master Innholders YouTube channel. Now let me tell you a little bit about the Master Innholders, because this production is as a result of MIDAS, which is the Master Innholders Developing Additional Skills. And they sponsor us to produce things like this in terms of free training, free webinars for anybody in the hospitality industry to increase their skills, increase their skill set. In addition, we run the Aspiring Leaders Programme, which is a programme of a year long for anyone in hospitality or hotels who wants to management skills. And again, that can be seen on the Master Innholders website. So thank you for coming this afternoon. I'm really excited about this afternoon. We've got a great programme together and we've got some good content, so stay with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilary. So if I could introduce our two panellists for today. So we have Adrienne Hanna. Adrienne comes to us from Right Revenue, a company that she's founded and created a software solution for independent hotels. And if I could also introduce Michael Hayward, who joins us from HOSPA, the HOSPA Professionals Association, and also from his own company, the Hayward Group. And so I'll ask them both to introduce themselves. Can I start with you, Adrienne?
Sure, and thanks very much for having me on here today, Deborah. And like Michael, I'm really excited about your content today, and I think we'll struggle to keep it within an hour. But I guess my background before Right Revenue was I spent 13 lovely years in travel, contracting long-haul holiday brochures for a living, which was lovely. So although on the travel side, I was still very connected with hotels. Didn't move into my first hotel until 1997, which feels like just yesterday. And that was a sales job for Hilton. and Michael knows this story very well. I went out and contracted a lovely piece of business and took it to this person who was sitting in the corner of a room with lots of screens around him, and no one actually knew what he did, with no clue what he did. And his title was revenue manager, and he just sat there, bless his heart, gathering dust, never seeing the light of day and never being allowed out of the room. And I went to him with this lovely piece of business and said, here you go, look what I've brought. You know, I've got these 2,000 bed nights. And his response was, walk it. I don't want the business. You're going to displace high rate of business. You know, it's got to go. And that blew my mind. And I was just really intrigued to find out more about that. And my boss at the time said, salespeople never make good revenue people, because salespeople are too people and revenue people are nerdy Maz people. And I thought, I don't really agree with that. So I kind of moved my career into revenue management, and quite genuinely tell people I have the best job in the world, like the best job in the world. And did revenue management consultancy for a few years. And then about 5 years ago, decided to put, instead of having all of these spreadsheets and whatever, and try and help independent hotels understand the basics of revenue management, take all the complication out of it and just put stuff in front of independent hotels that would help them understand supply and demand and pricing. So that's where we are today. We have a software solution, lots of wonderful customers, some of which I see online today, which is great. And we're developing and hopefully helping that independent sector.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, Adrienne. And you, Michael, have also got a background, I think, which is quite diverse, ranging from independent through to the big brands in terms of your revenue management experience.
Yeah, that's right. My journey was kind of journey to Adrienne's. I was in a corporate office role in the Pacific region, and I was given a project of seeing whether this revenue management thing that was in the industry was going to add any significant value to the group of a couple of hundred hotels in that region. The project was reasonably successful. Within 5 years, I left that role, and it had gone from me just playing around to see what we could do with revenue management to a team of 34 people delivering really quite significant performance improvement for the hotels. And one of the key areas that we achieved that through was dynamic pricing, which we'll talk about a little bit as we get into today's conversation on demand forecasts. 7 years ago, I decided I wanted to run my own business. So I started up my company with just me. Now we're a team of 8 people on the payroll, and we have an office in Paris and an office in London. And it's fantastic. The big thing I thought I would miss from going into working as a consultant was not having my own team. And now I have my own team, which is brilliant. But the reason I say I come at this from the opposite end, I started in those early days of revenue management. And one of the things people often say about me is revenue managers are supposed to be those geeks that Adrienne was describing, kept in the basement without a window, playing on their spreadsheets all day. And I have a much more people-driven approach to how to make revenue management work. And I love it when people tell me that food and beverage don't do revenue management. It's a load of rubbish. Food and beverage has been doing revenue management for a long time. They just disguise it by using terms like menu engineering and menu pricing and those sorts of things.
Happy hour.
So I love that conversation around it. Yes, absolutely.
Lovely, thank you.
So that's me.
Fantastic, thank you. So my background is in finance, and so when I talk about forecasts and budgets, it's obviously from a finance perspective. But today we're here to talk about demand forecasting, and in particular what it is and why you need to do one. And I think, Adrienne, would you like to start us off by just really outlining what is this thing, a demand forecast, and why should we be doing it?
I think very simply, if you literally look at the question you've just asked, because it has those keywords in there, and that's demand forecasting. And that is literally just predicting numbers. That's all it is. It's just predicting how much demand you're actually going to get. But I think there's a couple of reasons that we do it. One is for wonderful people like you, Deborah, that we often fight against in the hotels, is fighting with the finance, but please don't give me that budget. So we have to produce some sort of demand forecasting, for the financial teams in the hotel. We have to produce a demand forecast for, as Michael says, the F&B outlets and all the other departments in the hotel, because as Michael really correctly said, and it's one of my big bugbears, is that we still kind of tend to operate as individual little modules or individual departments in the hotel. But it's our job as revenue managers to say, okay, it's a Tuesday in September. We know we're going to be fully booked, but they're all going to be corporate. So, with one person in the room. So how's that going to affect, the takings in the bar, in the restaurant, and how many people are going to come down for breakfast compared to if it's a Saturday in August. You're going to have maybe double occupancy or families in the property, and that's going to change the dynamic of the number of people in the hotel and how they're going to move around your outlets. And so the chefs need to know. The bar people need to know. It's for staffing. We had a long conversation about this yesterday. So it's our job as a revenue manager to predict how many people are coming into the hotel for a staffing point of view. But then from a revenue point of view and a sales point of view, it's our job to predict what rate people are going to pay, when they're going to start booking, what their price point is going to be, how their bookings are going to come in. Are they going to come in direct through a third party? What their cost of sale is going to be, what their risk of cancellation is going to be, and when they're going to pick up, when they're going to stay, and importantly, when the need dates are, so that we as revenue managers can say to our sales team, or marketing team, hey guys, we're really pacing behind for September. Leave me alone. I'll leave you alone for July and August. We're doing really great. Business is great. But I've produced a forecast. I see that our demand isn't what it should be potentially for September. So we need to act on it now. So it's not a revenue manager's job to bring that business into the hotel or to stimulate that demand. It's a revenue manager's job to communicate that out to other departments, for everyone to work as a team to try and fill that demand. And actually, that's what that demand forecasting actually allows you to do: predict times when you're going to be busy, predict times when you're going to be quiet, and then put strategies in to help the hotel actually maximize revenue during those days.
So it's really a coordination role, isn't it, and communicating the position of the business. And how often do you think the demand forecast should be updated?
Well, I have to say every day, because I have a revenue management software tool, and we forecast every day. In fact, there's a lot of hotels we forecast multiple times a day, but it depends. But I'm being flippant. It literally at the minute, we all know that we're struggling with staff, and some hotels, their business is secured way in advance. So, they're looking at their forecast for, 6 months, 9 months, a year out, because they get a lot of international travel. Forget COVID, doesn't exist in my head anymore. Let's pretend it didn't happen. So we've got hotels that are predicting that demand and not having to react very quickly. And then you've other hotels. I was in a hotel in London on Monday, and I have an average of pickup of 150 rooms on the day for the day. Like, can you imagine trying to predict that? So they have to forecast constantly. They're changing their forecast every hour, every couple of hours. So it depends on the hotel, and it depends on your staffing and the skills and expertise. But it is something that we need to be looking at, whether it's every day, multiple times a day, or at least once a week.
So it's a constant work in progress.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Needing that updating. And then along with that, we've also got dynamic pricing as well, and looking at the implications of that. And when I started in the hospitality industry, which is very much last century, and at that point, pricing was very much, a price for the weekend, maybe price for the week, but there was very little other variation. Whereas now you're also balancing the variation in the price as well. Do you want to give us a bit more information about that, Michael, in terms of the impact of dynamic pricing on the demand forecast?
Yeah, sure. I think it brings us, it links from Adrian's point to say your revenue managers do lots of different kinds of forecasts. If I was your revenue manager, I'd be preparing forecasts for Deborah as our head of finance, where she's looking at monthly performance into the future. So there's three things that you're looking at with a forecast. First of all, there's the frequency, which we were just talking about, how often do we update it? Secondly, there's the horizon, how far ahead are we looking? And typically your finance people are going to be looking at through to the end of this year. And then when you're doing a budget process, you're essentially creating a forecast through to the end of next year. So that's the kind of horizon that Deborah would need from me. And then I'll have the operations and the F&B guys that are wanting to schedule their staffing. Their horizon is maybe 2-3 weeks ahead of time, or if they're looking at the annual leave, they might be looking a month ahead to see how many people they can have on annual leave. So the horizons for all of those are very different. But the other thing that's very different is the amount of detail that you're looking for. And Adrian's right, the gold standard is for us to be doing a demand forecast by day, by segment, because the way I can help the food and beverage guys know how many people to expect for breakfast on a Sunday morning or on a Wednesday morning is driven partly by the segmentation. Is it corporate or is it leisure? If it's leisure, what kind of leisure? Is it coach groups, whatever else it is? But the link to your point, Deborah, on dynamic pricing is what we're trying to do is sell all of the rooms at the right price, from the very first one to the very last one, which means for New Year's Eve, if the two of us have a hotel in Edinburgh and we know Hogmanay is massive, so New Year's Eve, 31st of December, there's no way I'm going to sell the first 25% of my rooms on cheap discount rates and then the next 25% on normal rates, and then start thinking, oh, wait a minute, it's going to be busy. I perhaps should have higher than normal rates. For an event like that, I can tell you right now, for next year, the year after, 5 years' time, 10 years' time, Edinburgh will be full and lots of people will be really keen to go there and be prepared to pay higher than normal rates to be in Edinburgh for that event. So naturally, what I want to do is set event high pricing from the first room I sell to the last room I sell. And exactly the same principle applies to a busy Saturday compared to a quiet Saturday. On a busy Saturday, people are prepared to pay more. So I want to have the prices a little bit higher. On a Tuesday night when I know I'm going to be fully booked, there's two aspects of dynamic pricing. One is I can set my public pricing a bit higher because I know it's high demand. And the second is I can shut off my discounted rates. I'm only going to sell on my higher rates. So dynamic pricing has several elements to it. What price am I going to set? And what prices or rates will I make available? Similar to what you were saying about in the bar, they may have a happy hour. But are you going to have happy hour prices for New Year's Eve? You're going to make a lot of money. You'll probably have a little bit higher price for champagne on New Year's Eve, or you'll sell better quality champagne at a marked up price because you know the demand is there. F&B's been doing that for probably centuries. In the room side, the complexity was what held us back for a long time. But now with modern computer systems, with our ability to keep track of our demand much better, now we can forecast the demand by day, by segment, 13 months into the future, and set the pricing that we believe we can sell the property at. So that's why the demand forecast and the dynamic pricing are so strongly interconnected.
Thank you, Michael. You used a few phrases there, but we should just highlight, I think, sort of the business on the books, so what we already have, as it were, booking pace as well, so looking at the flow of bookings, and this time last year, we're looking at previous patterns. And you mentioned quite a lot of information there around understanding what the trends will be based on past experience. So we know that certain events will be busy, certain times will be busy. But of course, we are in a period of really quite different results in many ways, and different perhaps profile for our businesses. And I know, Adrian, you mentioned in your introduction about moving on from COVID, but of course it is having some impact on how we forecast now and the different trends that we're seeing. And I know that you both have got lots of clients and lots of information that you're drawing on to be able to monitor really the current trends that we're seeing. What would you say are the sort of the biggest differences that we need to be considering at this point here in 2022, having gone through what we've experienced in the last 2 years?
I think for me, there's a couple of things. I think you cannot run away from the fact that things have changed. People have changed. Customer expectations have changed for sure. People, if they are spending money when they come to your hotel, they're looking for an experience. By and large, they are either looking for something budget to stay in, so that they can, go and experience something, on a budget, but still have that feeling of getting away and having, doing something. Or the next level up from that is they're actually looking for an experience. So I think our customer interaction and engagement and what we're actually providing for hotels has to change. That's probably a webinar in its own right. Mm-hmm. But I think booking pace has certainly changed. We've got about 100 hotels using our system now. We've over, I think it's something like 10,000 hotel rooms that we're looking at every single day. So what we're finding is with two booking patterns. One is people are booking way in advance. They know they want to go. They maybe have an aspirational plan of booking something, and they're booking it for September, October, November, and locking that in. But there's the next pattern, I guess, is those people that are booking last minute. So they're waiting to see, are the trains going to go? Are the flights going to go? And I think actually, for that whole staycation bubble, I think we were all a little bit concerned with, is everyone going to go off to Spain this year or whatever? I think people are still nervous of doing that. So, we still could have a lovely staycation market this summer, that's for sure. But I think there are definitely patterns of when people are booking, a lot closer to the date of stay. The other thing I guess I'm seeing would be a higher cancellation rate. People, we talked about this yesterday. I think Michael agreed that hotels are still offering a lot of flexibility around cancellation. So people are feeling that they can cancel. But if I can go back to what Michael said, and I really agree with him, is all of this information is based on data. It's based on good data, and making predictions. We as revenue managers, once you start to look at the data, once you start to analyze your trends, the fundamentals have not moved that much. As Michael says, Hogmanay is still going to be busy. That's not going to change. You're over here, July is our summer holidays here in Ireland, so July is really busy. August is busy for you guys in the UK. So we know we're going to be busy. We know we're going to be full on those Saturday nights. So we should be, as Michael said, controlling our rates, blocking out those low-rated pieces of business, and really pushing our rates when we can. But we know that, so those fundamentals have not changed. The bits around the outside of that, the things that have changed, of course we need to watch, of course we need to monitor, but you only get that with really good data. And that's, again, making sure that revenue is connected to your front office team, and making sure that the data going into your property management system is good and clean, because we as revenue managers cannot make great decisions unless we understand that segmentation. There's no point in having 50 different market segments. And one of my big bugbears is stop putting OTA as a segment. OTA is not a segment, it's a source. So make sure, clean up your property management system. If you do nothing else today, clean up your property management system. And no matter who is wearing that hat of revenue manager in your property, give them some good data to look at. Because although things have changed because of COVID, they haven't changed fundamentally. And we as revenue managers in our hearts know how Tuesdays behave in September, the first week in September compared to the third week in September. We know that. So just just trust your instincts, trust what you know, and just watch the information on the periphery, because it does impact, it will change your decision. But things haven't moved as far as I think some of the news feeds and some of the information that we were having at the start of COVID. Everyone thought the world was going to change. We'd never go back to work. We wouldn't have meetings anymore. We'd never travel. People wouldn't be too scared to go out. That hasn't, has not happened. So trust your instincts. And again, we talked about this yesterday. I know Michael is a lot more experienced than I have, but, look at making sure that you have can sift through all of this information that you're getting and pull out those pieces of truth, and don't listen to the rest of the noise, because we as revenue managers have that. We know it, and it's not rocket science. It's data and opinion. Put the two of them together and they've got a really good rate strategy.
So the key really is good, clean data, which is going to stand you in good stead for this year, into next year, being able to track then those trends. And so what would be your hot tips, Michael, for ensuring that you've got good, solid, clean data, as Adrian says?
Well, yeah, the data really is key. Make sure you're understanding the data, and make sure you know where the weaknesses are in it, and make sure the people who are putting things into your system really understand the importance of it. Just coming back to that point on what are we seeing happening in the market at the moment, and maybe to go through some of the terminology that you may hear revenue managers using quite a lot. And I think between Adrian and I, we've probably lobbed some of these out there. But one of the terms we use quite a bit is talking about lead time. And the lead time is the amount of time between when someone's making a reservation and when they're going to stay. So if we say lead times are getting shorter, that means people are making reservations closer to the time when they're actually going to stay. Lots of last minute activity. If lead times are getting longer, it means more people are planning further out. So at the moment, in cities like London, Amsterdam, Paris, the cities are very heavily booked. I was chatting to a mate of mine yesterday who was saying, he's been going week after week now, fully booked 7 days a week. And that just hasn't happened before. The whole idea of being able to draw breath on Sunday night has gone at the moment, because these big cities, these destination cities, city centres are absolutely humming. And they're not, so historically, they will see in their data that the lead times look longer because they're selling out earlier than they'd expected to. So they're not taking anything in the last week or so. So when you are talking about things like pace, how quickly is the business coming in? Now, if you're watching your data carefully and you're seeing that from a month out, the bookings are coming in much faster than you would expect, that's when, coming back to your earlier point on demand forecasts, you're saying to yourself, wait a minute, the demand looks like the market is telling me that the demand is higher than I'd expected. So maybe I should shut out more of my wholesale discount, advance purchase, whatever it might be. Or maybe I should put my rates up. Maybe I should close out my standard rooms and just sell the deluxes and the suites, because demand is so strong. If I do nothing, I'll sell out a couple of weeks ahead of time. So when you're looking at the pace, if we're ahead of pace, what can we do to make sure we get the most valuable pieces of business? If we're a long way behind pace and someone comes to us with a piece of wedding business or a coach group, then we're probably going to say, yes, absolutely, I'd love to take it. I'm behind pace. I'm going to struggle to hit my demand. So there are things that you can do when you're ahead of pace or behind pace, so long as you know what your normal booking activity is leading into a particular day. So looking at, and you mentioned Bob's our friend, that's our business on the books. And don't be trapped. If you've got a system like Opera and you have a look in your PMS, there'll be a lovely report that's called the forecast report. And you'll run that report and it'll tell you Saturday night in a month's time, we're only sitting at 60% or 50%. Yeah, that's the amount of business we've currently got in the system. That's not what we will do on the Saturday night. If we're a leisure hotel, we'll fill on that Saturday night. But that report in the PMS is trying to tell you it's a forecast. It's not a forecast at all. It's your bob, it's your business on the books. And if you want a good idea as to whether that level of business on the books is ahead of where it should be or behind, have a look at the same point in time last year. And in some revenue management terminology, they'll talk about spit. It's not because they're liking llamas or they're wanting to be rude. Same point in time. So if I looked at July last year on a Thursday and looking ahead to a Saturday that was 3 weeks ahead, where was I sitting at that point in time? And where am I sitting now? How does that compare? Am I ahead on pace or behind on pace? So that's the kind of data we're looking at all the time. And the one other thing I would like to add to that, and again, building on Adrian's point, make sure you're thinking about your segmentation. We've had a lot of people patting themselves on the back for having really good average rates as we've come out of COVID. But the ones who know what's going on, one of the things that they recognize is we don't have any of those inbound tour groups from the Far East that used to be on quite low rates. So we might be selling the same sorts of prices that we were pre-COVID. We might be having the same sort of leisure corporate prices, but because we don't have those net wholesale average rates dragging us down, we look like we're making lots more money. But the reason you need to be careful about that is when that inbound wholesale business starts to come back in, it'll look like our average rate drops. There is a big difference between your price and your average rate. And the difference is the mix. How much of the high price stuff have you sold? How much of the low price stuff have you sold? So understanding that really is the key to being able to forecast well and to understand what's coming in. I loved what Adrian was alluding to. One of the things that revenue managers need to do is listen to everybody, listen to lots of opinions, and then check them against your data. So if what that person said was actually happening to my hotel, what would that look like? Like Adrian was saying, what does the summer holiday business look like? We had lots of staycation last year. Is that what's going to happen this year? Michael's just told me that London's really busy. That doesn't mean everywhere in the country is busy. It doesn't mean Liverpool's busy. It doesn't mean Luton is busy. Maybe it is, but whatever you're doing, listen to the interesting things you're hearing and then check what your data in your hotel is telling you. So it's really important to make that connection and be prepared to critically evaluate opinions and ideas and then try stuff out. Both of us, I think all three of us actually, are quite keen on try stuff out, but be objective in having a look at what the results are of the things that you're trying out. If it doesn't work, you've learned something and you've learned to stop doing that. If you try something and it works brilliantly, fantastic. You've just improved the performance of the business. You've made that little step forward. Great, bring it on. What's next? So that's how you bring it all together with the data.
So it really is a combination of using that past data, but also the insight from now. Yeah. Because we are in a different situation, but that past data still has a lot of value. But
yep.
And combine that with what you're seeing now and really what you're hearing about the future as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's lovely. Thank you. Can I pick up on a couple of things that you mentioned earlier? I think you both mentioned cancellation policies, and I guess with that overbooking strategies as well. Do you think we're in a different position now than we were, say, a couple of years ago? Or I mean, what's your view on how we should be managing, say, cancellation policies at this point?
If I jump in and maybe start, Michael, you know me, I like to talk. I think there's two things, and I think it actually circles back to what Michael actually was saying. So there's two fundamental mistakes that hotels make in when they're setting their pricing. One is setting the price based on business on the books. So I've got 10 rooms sold for Saturday, the 15th of August. So I'm going to sell, that's, you know, I have 100 rooms to sell. I've only 10 sold. I'm going to keep my price low. So stop looking at Bob. He's really helpful. And we need to know, like, Bob needs to be in our lives and we love Bob, but do not set your pricing based on Bob. Base your pricing based on where you're going to end, not where you are today. And even for people who are new to revenue management, if you change that one thing, you're going to add potentially double-digit growth to your bottom line. Like that, it's that simple. The second thing, and I suppose it looks round to your question, Deborah, is do not set your pricing based on your competitive set. That's fundamental mistake number 2. Take it into consideration, watch what your competitors are doing, know what they're doing in the market. But as Michael also said, that is just another piece of information. It's just another piece of data for you to look at, because again, you know, if you are setting your rate saying, oh, well, the hotel down the street, the Hilton down the street is selling at X, I need to be 10 pounds cheaper. Who's setting your rate strategy there? It's not you, it's the guy in the Hilton. Let's be honest, the guy in the Hilton, much as we don't know him, but we love him, could be an idiot. We could be making really bad decisions, which we are then basing all of our strategy in. And the second point on that is, you're only seeing one tiny piece of their business. You're only seeing their bar rate. So you're not seeing what's happening with all of their other segmentation, and you're not considering all of your segmentation. So I think if you change those 2 things in your strategy from today, those are things that are going to add to your bottom line. But I guess the reason I wanted to throw those in was about the OTAs. We know Booking.com come out and say very openly that 50% of their bookings cancel. People are booking multiple hotels and then deciding whether they're going to go away at all, or they're going to pick 3 or 4 hotels or 3 or 4 locations. So I think you have to take that into consideration, that we are getting a high level of cancellations at the moment. But again, that's all tracked with data. And don't assume that you're just going to lose 10 rooms every night to cancellations. Are you losing 10 rooms on a Tuesday night, but 40 rooms on a Saturday night? Are you losing those rooms 3 weeks in advance, 3 hours in advance, 3 days in advance? So you have to understand what those patterns are for room type, by segment, by source. So don't assume that, you know, you can just blanket wipe off 10 rooms every night because you think they're going to get cancelled. Take a deeper dive into that data, and no matter what, life is full of trends. Life is full of patterns. Whether we all think we're unique and individual, we all get up in the morning and have our coffee and clean our teeth and do all those things, so do our customers. There are patterns everywhere, and use that data to make really good decisions. But with regarding overbooking, you have to understand those cancellation policies to understand whether you can make an overbooking. Overbooking is good. Overbooking is great. Outbooking is not. So, you know, having disgruntled customers, having to walk them from your hotel is not a good policy. But understanding that, you know what, you know, I know on any given night by 3 o'clock on a Saturday, 4 rooms will have cancelled or 10 rooms will have walked. You only understand that with good data, and then make your decision. But this is where really good revenue managers come in now, because revenue managers are no longer those dusty nerds in the corner. They're the ones making really good decisions and coming to the board and coming to the management team and saying, hang on a second, this is what we need to do to make our hotel more commercially successful. And the sooner we change revenue management to commercial management and allow them to make great decisions, I think that's going to be very empowering.
Mm. Oh, that's really interesting.
Right.
Go, Michael, go!
Where do I pick up on that from?
Can I just
I'm just going to pick up.
Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry,
okay.
Michael. I was just going to say about the people who aren't revenue managers. If I'm not a revenue manager, how do I contribute to the commercial impact of my bit of the business? Because I know you're keen on that too.
Very keen on that. I work with quite a few different companies, and there are some companies where really they're not interested in what their operations team input. They do everything very centrally. They do everything from data. I think there's a much better way to work, which means you're collaborating very much with the people in the different teams. And just to give you an example of that, I mean, this summer, the weddings demand has been massive. You've effectively got 3 years worth of summer weddings all trying to pack into this summer. So, you know, weddings hotels are doing loads of business all through the week, all through the spring, all through the autumn, people crossing their fingers for good weather. How do you get a piece of weddings business or a piece of conference business to be priced right so that you secure the business because it's worth a lot of money? What you really need is, and it's a term that I'm notorious for using, you need a bit of dynamic tension. So you need the chef standing up for, here's the price, the best price that we can do for the food side. We need to be looking at the beverage side. What can we charge for the champagne? Which champagne are they prepared to pay for? You then need to think about the bedrooms as well as the meeting rooms. Adrian and I were chatting with a bloke going back a month or so ago who was working with his meetings and event space, and he had a client who came in and said, we don't pay room hire. It's a principle of our company. We never pay room hire. And his response was beautiful. He said, well, that's perfectly fine. When you come into the meeting room, you'll find the chairs stacked in the corner there. Just get people to grab the chairs and put them out, and the tables will be folded up against the wall there as well. And we'll leave the cloths out for you as well. Feel free to set the room as you choose. And the client said, well, no, you'll set the room for us. And his response was, wonderful, you'll be happy to pay the room hire then, because that's how we pay someone to do that for you. And that was great. He was standing up for, you are paying for something, you are getting something. And this guy, you heard Adrian's story when she introduced herself, that tension between the salesperson and the revenue management person. In my view, good revenue managers really embrace that kind of dynamic tension. We need to work with the operations team. We need to work with the resis team. We need to work with the sales team. But we need all of those different people to be standing up for their side of it. So if you've got a wedding where, you know, the young couple are going to be paying for quite a lot of it themselves, and they really need, if we want to win the business, we need to give them a great rate, but they've got family coming from all over the world, then we can sit there and say, you know what, we can be a little bit generous on what we give them as a package for the wedding, because if they're all going to come and stay with us, if we're going to get 50 rooms with people coming from the US and Australia who are not just going to stay the one night, they'll stay 3 or 4 or maybe a week, you know, we can make really good money on the bedroom side. We can afford to be a little bit more generous on the side where the couple are paying for it themselves. So weddings are a great example of, if you want to get the revenue management strategy right, you must understand the customer and you need to get what you're worth. But don't be so arrogant that you lose the business altogether. That's no good for anyone. So that the words I'd like to leave with you all is dynamic tension. You should be sticking up for your side of it, and you should be expecting your revenue manager to be pushing and challenging in order for us to arrive at the right pieces of business, because we're building up our business and getting the right rate, getting what we're worth. I think one of my favorite things to do with the students that I work with when we do show and say, what is it that people are buying when they buy a hotel room? Because the key concept is we sell a room night, and that room has a different value from one night to the next. In those, you know, those few days between Christmas and New Year, when no one really wants to travel, they want to be with their family. A room in a hotel in a corporate location, there's not a lot of demand for it. So you really can't drive the big high prices when there's a massive event in town. But you need to understand that balance between the two. It still doesn't mean you give it away for 50 quid. One of my examples of where someone had a bit of a misguided idea, unfortunately it was an operations person. He seemed to think that all you need to do is drop your price further and further and further, and you'll get more and more business. He was running an economy hotel within a portfolio I was working with. So he took his price below. What happened? Our occupancy fell dramatically. Our rate fell because he dropped the price so low, but our occupancy went down. And this is the key thing. good revenue managers will think from the customer into the business, and operations people are normally very good at understanding that because you're dealing with the customers all the time. What is a customer willing to pay? And what happened in that case, customers who were having a look online saw this economy hotel cheaper than a travel lodge, so the occupancy went down. His little experiment failed, and we got given the hotel back to control it from an RM point of view. We took the price above where it was before the initial experiment, but below where we thought customers would just think it was too much. And we had a price ending in a 9 because it was economy hotel, and we took the occupancy straight back to where it was, and we delivered more revenue on the same occupancy they'd originally had. And that was a case where, you know, we had a lot of arguments backwards and forwards, dynamic tension. We agreed to allow an experiment to run. We learned a lot from that experiment. Don't do that again. So my key thing there is we need to work together. We need to listen to each other. The operations guys often hear about things before we do in revenue. And sometimes we start seeing the bookings climb and we haven't the faintest clue why. Talk to the hotel. They might be able to say to you, oh yeah, there's a festival that's been announced that's going to be in this location, or a car show that's going to be on. We don't know if we're sitting in an office somewhere. So that piece of the connection, understand the value of the things you know, and be prepared to fight for the things that are important on your side. So that dynamic tension is really important to good revenue management.
We're really talking about engagement
I hope that helps
with the team in the business.
Yeah.
As Hilary said, that we've got quite a lot of non-revenue managers on the call today, and what we really want to get to the heart of is their role in revenue management within the property. And it's not just accommodation, but it's food and beverage and meeting space, spas, the whole asset, isn't it, in terms of revenues there.
Yeah, I mean, on the F&B side, I mean, we talked before, Deborah, about having happy hour pricing, but also what sort of offers do we put together in the school holiday period for people travelling with kids? What are we trying to achieve? What kind of prices are we charging? If we're known as a really family-friendly hotel, we have a really great kids menu. We know how to, put the little things out on so the kids can start doing their drawing. You know what? Operations can do amazing things like get kids food in front of them fast. Because if they're hungry and you're waiting for the fantastic steak to be cooked for dad, don't worry about everything arriving at once. Just get food in front of the smallest child at the table so they're not hungry anymore. Once they've been fed, they'll do their little drawings and whatever. Don't leave them hungry. You might say, what the hell's that got to do with revenue management? Those are the things that parents appreciate and they will write comments about, and other families will now say, oh, here's a place that I want to stay, instead of the one that doesn't have a kids menu down the road. Because if I'm driving 3 hours with kids in the car, honestly, if I know I'm going to be looked after when I get there, I'm going to book there again and again. The relevance of that to a revenue manager, if you guys in operations are doing things that mean there is more preference, more people want to stay with us, you're now giving me more demand than my competitor. Any decent revenue manager, you give me demand, I'll turn it into cash. We know how to turn preference into profit by driving the top line. You guys control whether people love.
I think Michael might have
customer service side of it to drive performance. Sorry, Deborah.
No, it's all right. I think you just froze for a moment there. I was just prepared in case you disappeared, but you came back.
That relates to what we were saying. That relates to what we were saying yesterday, wasn't it? Where the experience drives the rate and the relationship between the experience and the rate. Say a little bit more about that, because that's really key, isn't it, in terms of not dropping rates. And
I think a few years ago, if someone had asked me, what impact does TripAdvisor have on your, or any review site, sorry, not just TripAdvisor, but what impact Does, you know, someone saying, oh, you know, I love the cake, or the water was cold, or whatever, does that impact my ability to price? Honestly, if you'd asked me that 5 years ago, I would have really struggled, thinking, why is that impacting my price? Let me work that out. But actually, Michael's 100% right. Every point of your customer journey, and that's from where you are on Google, your digital marketing, the messaging that you're putting across, even in those little ads that hang from Google, what happens when you come to your website, how easy it is to book, how great your rates are, right through to your pre-stay email, your arrival process. All of those things impact your customer journey. And if anything impacts your customer journey, it impacts your ability to price. So that is, like Michael said, what's happening in the restaurant, the service that you get in the bar, all of those things impact your ability to price. So that's why, again, I've said it at the beginning, it's my biggest bugbear is that we don't, as hotels, we're the oldest, one of the oldest industries in the world. You know, for goodness sake, Mary and Joseph tried to check in somewhere, and we still, you know, haven't got this right. Sorry if that's offensive to anyone. I meant it as a tongue-in-cheek remark, but you know, we've been around for a long time, and we're still struggling with that dynamic tension that Michael talks about, those departments working together of, you know, I shouldn't have ever had to come to YL, my revenue manager in Hilton, and say, look at what I've got this rate, I've got these room nights. I should have been sitting down, the sales team should have been sitting down with revenue every few weeks and going, what do you need? What kind of business do we need? Where's the gaps? What can I get? Do we need more corporate? Is it more government? Is it worldwide corporate? Is it local corporate? What is it? You know, so if you're not having those conversations with your sales team, with your marketing team, with your restaurant, with your front office team, you know, my big bugbear, and I promise you, I will not stay in a hotel if I go to a check-in desk and the girl behind the desk or the guy behind the desk is standing with their head down. I may stay there once, I will never stay there again. So, you know, all of those, every single touch point, and that's why I think revenue is key to all of those things, because all of those things are key to revenue. But if I know Michael has got an opinion on this, I'm sure, but just very quickly, when you said lots of people on the call are not revenue managers, I love that, because when we were building Right Revenue, we built it with the kind of hotel that I'm used to working with, and that is a hotel that doesn't always have a revenue manager. Now, we work with some incredibly strong revenue managers who that's just their role. But out of our portfolio, I would say 80%, 85% have what we call an also revenue manager. Sorry, I just did that, sorry. But, you know, someone who's got another role to do, reservations, front office, sales even, general manager, owner, who's responsible for changing rates. But if we go right back to the start, it's understanding your business, taking all that big data out of the way and looking at relevant data and making your decisions based on that. So people can be revenue managers if they're making good decisions. Sorry, Michael.
No, that's all right. I just wanted to add on to that, as you may have seen from the introductory slide and some of the material Hilary and Deborah have sent out about this. One of the things that I work on is delivering the professional development courses for HOSPA. We have 3 different levels of revenue management training. One of them is for foundation level, the next one is operational level, and the third one is a strategic level. The foundation level is great for anybody that wants to understand. If you've listened to what Adrian and I are talking about today, and Deborah was instrumental in building this revenue management course for HOSPA many years ago. But anyone, as Adrian was saying, it could be an ops manager, it could be anybody that wants to understand, or salespeople who want to understand revenue management better. That foundation course is a great way to go. They're designed for people who are in demanding full-time jobs in the hospitality industry. And you're supported by a real human being, a real tutor at the other end. Adrian and I do quite a bit of work with this to support her software, because a great tool in the hands of someone that doesn't know what they're doing, yeah, all right, bit of a gamble, off you go, good luck. But a great tool in the hands of someone who really knows what they're doing, that's where you start to achieve some really, really cool stuff. So if any of you have listened to what we've been rabbiting on about, you can tell the enthusiasm we've got. And I know Deborah is very, very much grounded in all of this as well. She's seen this revenue management discipline grow over the years. Yeah, we'd be more than happy to help you out. And I think I speak on behalf of Adrian as well. Reach out to us if you've got any other questions as well. We're on LinkedIn. We're pretty passionate about what we do. Deborah or Hilary can introduce you. We'd be more than happy to help you if you've got any quick questions you want to ask, or as Hilary said in the chat, you can ask us.
I do have a question that's come in from Charlotte. How do you prepare a strategy and a forecast for a new business? Is it based on location, competitors, gut instinct? What sort of data do you need to look at to help you make predictions and monitor the trends? So we've got just a few minutes left. Do you want to have a go at that one?
Want me to? I'm going to throw this to you, Michael. Go on if you want. I know you're buzzing to get at that answer.
I'm delighted with that question, particularly because she named several of the things that you will use. But it's just like opening a new restaurant. If I open a fast food restaurant across the road from McDonald's and I try and match McDonald's pricing, I'll go out of business because they run at a much lower cost level than we do. So if you're opening a full service hotel across the road from an economy hotel, don't try and match them for pricing. You do need to think of your cost base as well. But also when you built it, you would have had a bit of a thought about, are we building this for corporate? If you're in the middle of a business park, then you need to find out the corporate rates. There are clever ways you can do that on the GDS and in other areas. So what are the prices that these people are prepared to pay? If you give them the same price, but across the road from their office, where the competitor is 20 minutes away by cab, then you can probably get a bit of a higher price because they're going to save all those cab rides. So there's a lot of different elements to it. But typically the people who build and develop hotels know the kind of rates that they need to achieve. There's a course that I teach at Gleon where we spend an entire class talking about how you set your pricing and your segmentation for new build hotels. And as you said, Deborah, I don't have time to get to the detail of that, but the way you ask the question, do I look at competitors? Yes. Do I look at cost? Yes. Do I have a gut feel? Well, you'll also have an idea as to what is the demand coming into the area, and you'll set your pricing based on that. I hope that helps.
Lovely, thank you, Michael. Do you want to add anything to that, Adrian, in the last minute?
No, I agree with everything that Michael has said, but I think it's also, you know, when someone is building a hotel, they know the kind of customer that they want. They've built it for a reason. So as Michael said, is it corporate? Is it leisure? If it's leisure, is it, you know, a 3-star? You're building a 5-star. All of those things will help you determine your pricing and also what your product offering is. But I think, as Michael said, with a term in tech, and it's, if you're going to fail fast. So if you put something out there, a price, you know, you can put it out and label something as an introductory price so that you're not limited to you know, what's going out into the market. But as Michael said, if you're looking at corporates, there's a clever way to get corporate rate. But, you know, try something, put packages out there, opaque the rates so no one can actually understand. By opaque, I mean hide it in the package. So add on a dinner, add on a early check-in or a drink or something, so people can't break down how much your room costs. That gives you a little bit more flexibility on testing pricing and to see what customer price points could be.
Those are all great tips. Many thanks indeed. So thank you to you both for all of your insights this afternoon. As you say, when we were discussing yesterday in our preparations, we could probably have many webinars on these. That's something we should certainly look at for the festival for next time around. So thank you very much to everyone joining us today on the session. Just a reminder, we've got 2 more sessions coming up, so do have a look at the reminder that you'll get coming through by email with the link for the session for next week and the week week after that. And if you are interested in having access to some free online resources to help you with costing, pricing, planning and so forth, then Arena for Finance is offering a complimentary membership of our resources during the period of the festival. So please do contact me for that, and I'll be able to help you with access to that. So once again, thank you. And the recording will be available in a few days on both the Midas website and also on Arena for Finance. So you'll be able to recap and review the content from today.